As you draw, you're going to want to get more accurate. The more accurate you get, the more able you'll be able to identify your plant. The more familiar you're going to be able to get with your plant. You are going to want to study how they grow, how they reproduce, where they live, how they've evolved for their particular ecological niche. You're going to be depicting the characteristics of this individual plant, so note details carefully. So as you're doing your field sketching, you're also going to be wanting to take some photographs, because in the dead of winter, these photographs plus your field sketches will be invaluable. You want to photograph from every point of view, every side of it. You want to photograph the details, and you will be amazed at what you forget when you get home. Don't depend totally on your photography though, because your photography, your camera just can't adjust for highlights and deep shadows. It will always do the highlights too light and the shadows much too deep. This is where your field sketches come in. It is very, very important to do these field sketches to try and get your highlights, your shadows, your mid values accurately drawn, painted from the outset of when you begin. Eventually, you will want to be so familiar with your plant that you can literally draw it from memory. Many of some of the best botanical artists that are out there, they literally will grow their plant and draw it for a season or two before they even start their painting. By then they've got so many sketches and paintings and photographs that they're able to use those resources to be able to do a full-fledged painting by the time they end it. You'll also, for those of you who love sunlight, which is something that I love in particular, is how light falls on form. When you photograph your plant, try to make sure the light is always coming from about the same time of day, as well as you are in the same position, because I can tell you trying to make up light is really, really, really difficult, and you don't want to have to go through that pain at all. You also need to be careful with your camera, because cameras will distort the perspective. They if you get too close, you can get a fisheye. You only get part of your subject in focus and the rest of it will be out of focus. I have a 300 zoom lens, and a lot of times I'll stand about 15 feet away from my plant when I'm photographing it, because I've got a much deeper depth of field that way, so that the whole plant is in focus. And if I use my DSLR, which is a digital single lens reflex, I can do what's called raw files, which includes a great deal of detail, especially when I am traveling and I can't stop to do field sketches. I'm going to be having to follow from my photographs in order to be able to do a painting. You need to be very, very careful with using your cell phones to take your photograph, because that is a teeny weeny little lens. Your color is frequently going to be off, and that's going to be true with the digital SLR as well. But in particular, your perspective can really, really be off. And I highly recommend that you try taking like a piece of glass or plexi and drawing your subject on that plexi, and then come back with a photograph and take a picture of the same thing, put it up on your computer screen and compare the two. And you will be amazed at how much your camera will be distorting your image. So you need to keep in mind, and that's another reason to have your field sketches, because you'll be able to correct for that kind of camera distortion. When you get home, you have some research to do. You are going to need to find out its scientific name. And you're going to want, once you have had botany, you're going to be able to key out, what's called keying out. So you can start at the family and just kind of work your way down until you get to the correct genus and species. This is extremely important because for those of you who are going to go on to graduate, you need to be able to identify your plant correctly. Every once in a while we get someone who slips and they didn't get their plant correctly identified. So you want to learn that. And plus it's just kind of fun to learn the names of the plants. I'm terrible at the Latin part of it, but I really enjoy learning the names of the plants because so frequently the name will match the plant. You also want to be thinking about where does it grow? What kind of habitat does it need? What kind of soil does it need? What kind of sun does it need? Is it going to be shade? Is it going to be understory? Is it going to be out there in the middle of the field? Because a lot of these things can help spur ideas later for paintings. You also want to find out, is it one of those plants that eats things, or who eats it? What are the associative plant insects that can go with these plants? Because a lot of times you can incorporate those insects into a botanical illustration. You need to find out and be able to paint accurately the color, the highlights, the shadows, the midtones, the color of these, of your particular plant that you will be doing. And you want to do that as much as possible out in the field, which means you probably will, and we'll cover this more once we get into color theory, but you want enough colors in your palette in order to be able to find and match those particular color. Other thing you want to look at is what is the personality of your plant. So is it floppy? Is it happy? Is it upright? Is it wandering? Is it overlapping and dense? Is it bent with age? Is it weathered? Is it twisting? Is it messy, symmetrical, asymmetrical, graceful, Spartan? And as you're thinking about that, thinking about how you can frame your composition to enhance that personality. So with a vine, a vine comes down. And let me show you here. So a vine, that's something that's generally going to be and these are going to be very, very rough sketches. So a vine is going to be coming down like this. So generally speaking, you're going to want to have it in a more vertical format, which is going to help enhance the feeling of vine stretching down. If it's a vine that comes across and away from you, then you're going to want to do something that's going to be more like this, which is going to help tell the story of a horizontal vine. And I hope that you can see how framing it helps to go ahead and start telling a story about this particular plant. So generally vines, irises, things that are a vertical, you're going to want a vertical format. Vines that are horizontal, like a whole bunch of pansies in a row, you're going to want something that's horizontal. A lot of times if you do a pansy all by itself, you might want that to be in a square, because those help, that framing really does help the story, the person, express the personality of that particular plant. You're also going to want to eventually, as you really start getting into this, be thinking about the details, and you may want to go ahead and get doing that in your thumbnails, well, not your thumbnail, in your field sketches, but be thinking about the details as well, because you're going to want to be thinking about how the leaves attach to the stem, and you really, really, really want to get those drawn in with those initial sketches that you do, because these little detail points of, just how long are the little hairs that come off the stem? How does that stem attach to the back of the flower? How does the back of the flower attach to the main stem? What do the veins look like in the leaf? How do the leaves come off the main stem? All of these little details you're going to want to make notes of, and sometimes a lot of people will literally write their notes as well as doing the sketches so that they've got it in writing. They'll write down the colors, they'll write down the anything that they think of that will help. I personally write down what time of day it is, the day of the year it is. You know, am I hot and sweaty? Am I freezing to death? And is it raining? Is it cloudy? Is it sunny? And those help me as I'm thinking about my painting. What is my intent for this painting? What am I trying to tell the viewer? While you're out there in the field, if you can, try and collect the leaves, stems, roots, whatever else that you can collect, and dry them. Now, if you can get them during the entire season, you know, like maybe in the spring, you get those teeny weeny leaves just coming out. You get you get the very beginnings of the flower, you know, the little buds, and press them so you can see what they're going to look like. You might want to dissect your flower so that you can see and get that pressed so that you can see what the interior of your plant, of your flower is going to be like. Just try and get the entire growing season, you know, the leaves, you know, especially of the fall leaves, you know, what the colors of them at the very, very end of the season, and how that color differs so much from maybe it's very similar to the spring colors when their leaves are first emerging. So these can make some interesting ideas and interesting compositions. Now, if you're on private property that is not your private property, before you collect, get the permission of the landowner. If you are on state park land or national park land, national forest, you are not allowed to collect anything, not even rocks. So that's where the photography comes in, and you really need to get those field sketches in because you can't take that plant with you. Now, the botanical gardens or botanical gardens that are close to that area might have those plants for sale so that you can try and grow them yourself at home. So that's another idea. As you really start getting into the drawing, I have seen countless students try, you know, not having done enough field sketches, not having properly taken the photograph, and they then try and make up plant parts. I know my plants. I know how to research my plants. I will notice this when you get this wrong, and I will be able to tell when you are fudging. So please, please don't try and make up plant parts. If you don't have it, try and get back to the plant. If you can't get back to the plant, contact your local arboretum or botanical garden or herbarium, or possibly a university or college that's close by to you. Talk to their botanists and see if they can help you figure this out. I have not met a botanist yet who isn't thrilled that somebody else is interested in plants, and they are perfectly willing to help you. They might be busy and they might have to put you off for a little bit, but on the whole, plus it's just so much fun talking to them. So please feel free to contact somebody to help you get over your hump of not knowing what that particular part of the plant is and how to draw it and what it was supposed to look like, and you forgot to photograph it or draw it. So just keep that in mind.